Everything changes the moment an empath stops trying to earn love. That single shift is so powerful that the people around them often don't know how to respond. The person who always said yes suddenly becomes quiet. The one who carried everyone else's pain begins putting it down. The one who spent years fixing problems they never created starts walking away from emotional battles that no longer belong to them. To some people, this looks cold. To others, it looks selfish. But the truth is far more surprising. This is not the story of an empath losing their kindness. It is the story of an empath finally waking up. There comes a point when constant giving no longer feels meaningful. Endless understanding no longer feels noble. Endless forgiveness no longer feels like love. Instead, it feels exhausting. It feels empty. It feels like living someone else's life while forgetting your own. That moment of realization changes everything, and once it happens, there is rarely a return to the old version of that person. For years, many empaths believe their greatest strength is the ability to keep everyone happy. They become the peacemakers in families filled with tension. They become the trusted friend who listens without judgment. They become the partner who always understands, always forgives, and always gives one more chance. People admire this kindness. They praise the empath for being patient, caring, and selfless. Yet beneath that kindness, another story is quietly unfolding, a story that very few people notice. Every time an empath ignores their own needs to protect someone else's feelings, they lose a small piece of themselves. Every time they stay silent to avoid conflict, they teach themselves that their own voice matters less. Every time they accept disrespect because they fear losing a relationship, they strengthen a pattern that slowly becomes part of their identity. Most people never see this hidden cost because it happens so gradually. It becomes normal. It becomes routine. It becomes the way they believe life is supposed to be. Psychology offers a deeper explanation for this pattern. People often mistake chronic people-pleasing for simple kindness, but they are not always the same thing. Genuine kindness comes from freedom. People-pleasing often comes from fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of conflict. Fear that love will disappear the moment boundaries appear. Many empaths develop these fears long before they become adults. Some grow up in homes where keeping the peace felt safer than expressing emotions. Others learned that receiving love depended on being helpful, obedient, or emotionally available all the time. Without realizing it, they begin measuring their worth by how useful they are to everyone else. They stop asking what they need because they become experts at noticing what everyone else needs first. Over time, this doesn't just become a habit, it becomes an identity. They no longer know where kindness ends and self-sacrifice begins. The most fascinating part is that this transformation rarely begins because someone gives the empath good advice. It usually begins because life refuses to let the old pattern continue. Sometimes it starts after a painful betrayal. Sometimes it follows years of emotional exhaustion. Sometimes it happens when the very people they sacrificed everything for disappear during their hardest moments. The experience is painful, but it also opens their eyes. For the first time, they begin asking questions they avoided for years. Why am I always the one giving? Why do I feel guilty for protecting my own peace? Why do some people only appreciate me when I have something to offer? These questions become impossible to silence. They challenge beliefs that have existed for decades. They expose uncomfortable truths about relationships, boundaries, and self-worth. Most importantly, they begin revealing a version of the empath that has been hidden beneath years of people-pleasing. What happens next surprises almost everyone. The empath doesn't become heartless. They don't stop caring about people. They don't suddenly lose compassion. Instead, their compassion becomes wiser. They begin recognizing the difference between helping and rescuing, between love and emotional dependence, between forgiveness and allowing repeated disrespect. They discover that protecting their own peace is not an act of selfishness, but an act of emotional maturity. This quiet shift changes every relationship in their life. Some people grow closer because they truly valued the empath as a person. Others become distant because they only valued the empath's endless availability. That difference reveals more truth than years of conversations ever could. In today's video, you will discover why people-pleasing is often rooted in hidden psychological patterns that many people never recognize. You will learn why empaths attract certain personalities again and again until they change the way they see themselves. You will understand why setting healthy boundaries often causes unexpected reactions from the people around you, and why those reactions reveal who genuinely respects you. You will also discover the emotional turning point that causes many empaths to stop chasing approval and finally begin living according to their own values. Along the way, we'll uncover lesser-known psychological insights about empathy, emotional responsibility, self-worth, and the quiet transformation that takes place when someone chooses peace over constant sacrifice. These are lessons that can completely change the way you understand yourself and the relationships in your life. Make sure you stay until the very end, because the final lesson is often the one people overlook. It explains why the strongest empaths are not the ones who give the most, but the ones who finally learn when to stop giving. It reveals why true healing is not about becoming less loving. It is about becoming more honest with yourself. This final insight has changed the lives of countless people who spent years believing that their value depended on keeping everyone else happy. Once you understand this truth, you may never look at empathy, kindness, or relationships in the same way again. So if you're ready to uncover what really happens when an empath stops pleasing everyone and starts seeing the truth, you're in the right place. Welcome to the channel, where we explore the hidden psychology of human behavior, emotional growth, relationships, and the quiet transformations that shape our lives. If you enjoy thoughtful content that helps you understand yourself and the people around you on a deeper level, take a moment to subscribe and join our growing community. Now, let's begin this journey and discover the life-changing transformation that starts the moment an empath chooses truth over approval. The first sign of real change is surprisingly quiet. Nothing dramatic happens on the outside. The empath still smiles. They still listen. They still care about the people around them. But inside, something begins to shift. They start noticing patterns they once ignored. They realize they are always the first person someone calls during a crisis. Yet, when they are struggling, very few people reach out. They notice they are expected to understand everyone else's mistakes, while their own feelings are often dismissed or misunderstood. They see that they are the one making excuses for other people's behavior, forgiving repeated disappointments, and carrying conversations that would have ended long ago if they had stopped trying so hard. At first, these observations feel uncomfortable because they challenge everything the empath believed about kindness. They always thought that giving more love would eventually create more love. They believed that enough patience could heal almost any relationship. They believed that if they continued showing understanding, others would one day return the same care. But reality slowly begins proving otherwise. The empath starts remembering situations they once brushed aside. They remember the times they canceled their own plans to help someone who would never have done the same for them. They remember apologizing simply to keep the peace even when they had done nothing wrong. They remember comforting people who had just hurt them because they could understand why those people acted that way. Little by little, these memories connect like pieces of a puzzle. What once looked like kindness now begins to look like imbalance. The relationship was never built on equal effort. One person was carrying almost all of the emotional weight, while the other simply accepted it as normal. This realization can be painful because it forces the empath to admit that some of the relationships they valued most survived only because they were doing all the work. Psychologists often describe healthy relationships as a balance of giving and receiving. That balance does not mean everything is perfectly equal every single day. Life naturally creates moments when one person gives more support than the other. The problem begins when that imbalance becomes permanent. The empath becomes the emotional caretaker, while everyone else becomes comfortable receiving endless patience without offering the same respect in return. Over time, this creates emotional exhaustion that many empaths mistake for personal weakness. They wonder why they feel so tired when all they have done is care about people. The answer is simple, but difficult to accept. Caring is not what drains them. Carrying everyone else's emotional responsibilities is what drains them. This is one reason why manipulative personalities are often drawn toward people with weak boundaries. It is not because empaths are weak. In fact, many empaths are emotionally resilient. The problem is that their compassion sometimes makes them ignore warning signs that others would notice much sooner. A manipulative person quickly learns, who constantly gives second chances, who feels guilty saying no, who apologizes first, and who believes every difficult situation can be solved with enough understanding. Once these patterns become clear, the manipulator rarely needs to demand control directly. The empath willingly gives away their time, energy, attention, and emotional strength because they believe that love means endless sacrifice. The manipulator simply accepts the gifts without ever feeling responsible for giving the same care back. What makes this cycle even more dangerous is that manipulation is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it hides behind disappointment, sometimes behind guilt, sometimes behind silence. A simple sentence like, "I thought you cared about me," can make an empath immediately question their decision to protect their own needs. Instead of asking whether the request was fair, they begin wondering whether they are becoming selfish. This internal conflict keeps the cycle alive. The empath spends more energy defending their kindness than protecting their peace. They become so focused on avoiding conflict that they never ask whether the relationship itself is healthy. Eventually, something changes. The empath begins asking a different question. Instead of asking, "How can I help this person?" they quietly ask, "Why am I always responsible for helping?" That single question opens a door that has remained closed for years. Suddenly, they notice that some people only appear when they need advice, comfort, money, reassurance, or emotional support. Those same people disappear when the empath needs encouragement. This pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The relationship was never built around mutual care. It was built around emotional dependence. Once that truth becomes visible, pretending not to see it requires more energy than accepting it. As this awareness grows, another transformation begins. The empath slowly stops measuring their value through the reactions of other people. For years, being needed felt like proof of being loved. Solving other people's problems created a temporary feeling of purpose. Every thank you, every compliment, every moment of appreciation became emotional fuel. Without realizing it, self-worth became connected to usefulness. If someone depended on them, they felt important. If nobody needed them, they sometimes felt invisible. This pattern is closely connected to external validation. Instead of finding confidence from within, confidence depends on the approval, gratitude, or acceptance of others. That system feels rewarding in the beginning because helping people naturally creates positive emotions. But over time, it becomes a trap. The empath starts believing they must always earn their place in other people's lives. Rescuing others becomes especially powerful because it creates the feeling of being irreplaceable. When someone says, "I don't know what I would do without you," it feels meaningful. It feels like proof that their sacrifices matter. Yet psychology suggests that constantly rescuing others can slowly create emotional dependency on both sides. The person receiving help stops developing independence, while the empath becomes emotionally attached to the role of being the rescuer. Their identity revolves around fixing problems, calming emotions, and preventing conflict. The moment they stop doing those things, they fear losing their purpose. This fear keeps them giving long after they have become emotionally exhausted. The deeper truth is that self-worth can never remain healthy when it depends entirely on constant sacrifice. A person's value does not increase because they ignore their own needs. It does not grow because they tolerate disrespect. It does not become greater because they accept treatment that would hurt anyone else. Real confidence grows when people recognize that their worth exists before they solve anyone else's problems. This realization feels unfamiliar at first because many empaths have spent years believing love must always be earned. Learning that they deserve respect without constantly proving themselves changes the way they see every relationship. As this illusion slowly disappears, another hidden truth becomes impossible to ignore. The empath begins setting small boundaries that once felt impossible. They politely decline requests. They stop answering every late-night emotional emergency. They choose rest instead of guilt. They express honest opinions instead of automatic agreement. The reactions they receive reveal more than years of conversation ever could. Some people immediately respect the new boundaries because their care was genuine from the beginning. Those relationships often become even stronger because honesty replaces silent resentment. Other people become distant. Some express disappointment. Some become frustrated. Others accuse the empath of changing. What they truly mean is that the old pattern no longer benefits them. Healthy relationships adapt to boundaries because they are built on mutual respect. Unhealthy relationships often resist them because boundaries remove unhealthy access. When someone has benefited from unlimited emotional availability, even a small boundary can feel like rejection. That is why certain people react with anger rather than understanding. The empath finally begins separating genuine love from emotional dependence. They realize that someone who truly cares about them also cares about their well-being, their limits, and their peace. Someone who only values endless sacrifice was never protecting the relationship. They were protecting their own comfort. That realization hurts, but it also creates something the empath has not experienced in a very long time. A quiet sense of freedom that continues growing stronger with every boundary they choose to keep. People-pleasing often begins as a way to survive. For many empaths, it starts long before they even realize it is happening. They learn to avoid conflict, put others first, and believe their value depends on how much they can give. At first, this feels like kindness. Over time, it becomes a habit. Then it becomes an identity. But no one is meant to spend their entire life carrying the emotional weight of everyone around them. True compassion should never require you to abandon yourself. The greatest transformation begins the moment an empath understands that protecting their own peace is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-respect. Healthy boundaries do not make you less caring. They make your kindness genuine instead of exhausting. They allow you to give from a place of strength instead of obligation. They remind you that your feelings, your needs, and your well-being matter just as much as anyone else's. As you begin living differently, the people around you will respond differently too. Some will appreciate the healthier version of you. They will respect your boundaries and support your growth. Others may become distant because they were comfortable with the version of you that never said no. Some may even criticize the changes they see, but every reaction teaches an important lesson. It reveals who truly valued you as a person and who only valued what you could do for them. That truth may be painful at first, but it also brings a kind of freedom that cannot be found any other way. The day an empath stops living for everyone else is the day they finally begin living for themselves. Real strength is not found in endless sacrifice. It is found in knowing your worth without needing everyone else's approval. It is found in choosing peace over pressure, honesty over people-pleasing, and self-respect over constant self-abandonment. The strongest empaths are not the ones who carry everyone else's burdens forever. They are the ones who learn that loving others should never come at the cost of losing themselves. If this message spoke to you, let it be the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where kindness includes yourself. A chapter where your compassion is guided by wisdom instead of guilt. And a chapter where you no longer apologize for protecting the life you deserve. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our future videos on empathy, psychology, emotional healing, and personal growth. Share this video with someone who always puts everyone else first. They may need this message more than you realize. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what was the biggest truth you learned about people-pleasing, and which part of this journey resonated with you the most? We read every comment, and your story could inspire someone else to begin their own journey toward healing. Until next time, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and never forget that your kindness is most powerful when it includes you too.